Obviously, they're coming off a huge win, knocking off Kentucky, one of the best offensive teams in our league. Really showed what they do with their defense, how dominant they can be on that end of the floor. Um, Always a concern when you play them, especially this year. They've got an ability to switch 1 through 5 with lineups, makes it really, really hard to score. Then they find a way on offense. I think Madison Scott playing like you would expect a kid, fifth year kid that's, her career's winding down. She's playing at another whole level after having already a great career. So a big challenge for us. Been a tough matchup for us for the last few years. Um, Hopeful that, some of these teams we've played against will have us prepared to handle their effort, their intensity, their defensive pressure.
All right, Ethan.
Hey Mike, just first time that the team's really lost to kind of a gut punch SEC game that came down to the end. How do you think that they've responded to that?
Um, I didn't travel back with the team because I went to recruit, but I talked to staff. Was in the locker room there with them. Probably as hard as we've taken any loss yet, from what I gathered and what I got back. Because again, it's one of those one possession things, and they felt it at halftime. We had a bad second quarter. It's getting harder and harder to find the positives because we start to dwell on that one possession. That it wasn't the last play of the game. It wasn't the last missed free throw. It wasn't the last turnover. It could have been any of them. So, the pain that you go through with regret is a lot harder because it now has sunk in. It really is one possession. I can preach that, but when you're getting beat by 25 or 30, it doesn't really sink in. I've tried all the tricks that we've had over the years, and I just don't think there is a trick to that. I think until you lose one that you felt like was right there. But we had a good practice yesterday. We had a good practice, which is what they have continued to do all year long. They deal with it. They put it in perspective, and then they bounce back and we get back to work. Really good practice. Maybe one of our best ones in a long time. So hopefully we've learned from it. There's all those cool memes going around the internet. You lose or you learn. I think this group continues to learn. I hate it. It sucks. It stinks. Whatever word you want to. It's hard to be there. Nobody wants to win more than that group of kids and the people that get on that plane and the bus. And it was a one possession game that could have gone either way. It was going to probably be who had the ball last with a chance. And, their kid made a big play. So, but I do think our kids learned. I think as a result was one of the reasons we had a good practice yesterday.
Yeah, talking about a good practice. I know Keats was on minutes restriction for the last game. Is she back to practicing normal speed, and where's Kiki at with it too?
Uh, Keats was on a minutes restriction, and that's a really hard thing to navigate as a coach. Like I don't fully understand all that. Like I was always you could play or you couldn't, but so my plan was when I was given the number was to get her out there and see what I thought, how she felt. I just didn't think she looked like her normal self, so I didn't play her more than that, in hopes that that minute number would go up for practice the next couple of days, and it did. Her reps were a few more yesterday. Hopefully, there'll be a little bit more today. But I'm not about to put a kid out there before I'm 100% confident that they're ready. So she's closer, I guess. To answer your question, Keats is closer, and if she looks right and feels right and says the right things to me, and I believe her, then we'll play her more. Kiki got released to practice yesterday and didn't get very many reps in, so she's going to have to do more in practice before I'll even dress her, get her ready to dress out. Again, these two young people that got a lot of life ahead of them. I'm not going to risk a basketball game on their readiness. But Keats will practice more today, and then we'll see how Kiki does.
Yeah, and whenever you're playing an Ole Miss team, as like Madison Scott, who can run the point. They've just got long, athletic players. Their rebound margins high, turnover margins high. What does the team got to do to I guess those two areas that Ole Miss excels at least limit them?
Yeah. Well, you know that they can switch 1 through 5. I told Izzy to get ready to have Madison Scott on her. I mean, that's not your typical. Izzy's not being guarded by a kid like her very often. Um, So we worked on that in practice yesterday. Had a couple of our guys, practice players, simulating to their best ability. We don't have anybody that can simulate Madison Scott's effort and her care and her passion for, obviously, being 5 years at the same school is pretty rare. But we did our best with it. Vera, Danny, Chris, and Jenna, it's going to be imperative that they do a few things that they've not done so far. Vera's made enough threes. Like, Vera's threes look good. I probably should let her shoot more. But Chris and Jenna and Danny need to be ready to catch and shoot, not necessarily drive it, but catch and shoot it, catch and move it. Because I think they're going to do what people have, done repeatedly against Izzy is, they're going to guard her with one, they're going to double her with another, and then they're going to shade her with two more. I mean, you can look at the last 4 or 5 films. That's what everybody is doing. They put their best on-ball defender and tell them no help, don't let her catch it. Mississippi State put 2 of them on her, But then the next layer of that is every time she dribbles it, there's 2 more people waiting in the gaps or coming off somebody. So Izzy needs to continue to make the right basketball plays. I've got to do a better job of protecting Izzy. Like, I asked her to play too many minutes last week, all 80 minutes of the game. So I've got to hold back in practice. I still going to count on her for 80 minutes in the games, but I got to start holding her back in practice. And she hates that. She wants to be in every rep in practice too. So I think now after last weekend, she's convinced that maybe it's okay to set out on a Tuesday, 2 reps, so you got your legs on Sunday in the fourth quarter. Although she played her best in the fourth quarter the other night. It was more, the other earlier part of the game. So back to your question, 4 of those kids have got to be ready to do something they haven't done all year. And then, whether it's KJ, Jada, or if Keats is able to come back, those kids have got to be ready to catch it and shoot it, because that's what teams are giving us, and they're open. And sometimes it's hard to shoot wide open shots, but we've been practicing them a bunch. They got to be ready to step up and shoot them, and you got to make them for us to be productive.
Thanks, Mike. See you tomorrow night.
Yep.
Brett, you got any questions?
Mike, in regards to the turnovers that they force by numbers, is there something they do different from pressing, trapping, and then the volume that they try and score off those is such a big part of their offense? How does that factor in?
Well, they emphasize it. I mean, all you got to do is watch. They got it printed all over their gear. We defend, defense. It's their identity. So she's not going to recruit anybody that won't do it. And if they get there and they won't do it, she doesn't play them. I mean, they've got a bunch of kids that over the years have learned to play. She won't play them if they don't do that. So it's what they emphasize, Brett. I think that's the difference. Technically, scheme-wise, there's only so much you can do in basketball that people haven't seen before, but it's what they emphasize. It's what they demand. And as a result, their players that she plays, they get it out of them. I know they work at it every day. I know it's something they do. And as a result, I think they hang their hat on that. They are incredibly active. And that's obviously the players buying into the system and believing in it. And they've had success. They have 7 wins right now. I mean, they're headed to another 10-win SEC season. So they see that it works. Schematically, it's going to be stuff we've seen, but it's just a longer, more intense, more focused player doing it. We've seen kids, try to double team and trap, but they do it with a different level of intensity that, you see maybe when you play Texas. You see it a handful of times a year. But it is who they are. It's who they've become, and it's what they're known for. So they all are about the same size, so they can switch. Switching defenses are the hardest defenses to attack with set plays. So you have to be a little bit more motion thoughtful, a little bit more instinctive against that. And when you do that, it gets you thinking. And anytime you think, you usually turn it over a time or two more. So I think you factor those 4 things together, and each one of those produces a couple of turnovers. Now you're up to a double-digit number. And they do. They take them, they turn it, they translate them into points.
Was there anything about their last couple of games that stood out to you as a really bizarre Oklahoma game where they were down big, came back, and then at a 12-0 run they allowed, and then that Kentucky game, they kind of dictated the tempo. It felt like in a bulk of that.
Yeah, they went big. She started a lineup they hadn't went kind of a big lineup against Kentucky's size, and like I say, it really hampered them. I think Coach has done a great job. She brought in Quentin Hillsman on her staff, a guy who's been in the Final Four when he was at Syracuse, and I can it's obviously Coach Yo's blueprint, but I can see some hints of Quentin Hillsman's input. It's still Coach's plan, but you can see Quentin over there doing some things that I've seen him do during his times, the years that we've played each other when he was at Syracuse. So I think that's one reason Ole Miss is gone from they're one of the top teams in our league now. They continue to adapt and find offense to complement their defense, and I think he's been a big part of that.
All right. Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right. See y'all.